Majora's Mask, Book 3, Solitude, Chapter 24, Heading North. The carpenter's wooden tower once again stood intact and early in its development. Its laborers continued working as if it had never fallen, as if they had never gathered around its ruins and called for blood. The 4 gates were open. Guards stood at each one, never struck down by the masked imp. Muto commanded his carpenters, and Judo paced the floor in the hotel. Neither would tap into their true potential for malevolence. Anju lay in her bed staring at the ceiling. The wedding dress adorning her mannequin remained untouched beside her bed. The boy who had held her hand as she died was now a stranger. As Link stepped out of the clock tower doors, he found these realities sickening. All the previous day's horror had never happened, yet they'd still left scars that weighed heavy on his chest. Stepping into the orange, early morning sun, he recalled the screams of the dying and the Stockpot Inn burning to the ground. He recalled the ground exploding at Anju's feet. He remembered her body rising into the air helplessly, only to come crashing back into her blood. He saw his own eyes glowing purple, possessed by the dark magic embedded in his chest, as he struck the imp with a final blow. Only he, Tattle, and the Skull Kid remembered. The fairy by his side was the only person in Termina keeping him sane in these maddening loops. An endless procession of faces that will always forget me, Link thought. He used to believe that there was someone waiting for him in Hyrule, that, after all this fighting, he would have a home to return to. But Zelda's just a memory, Link realized. One that I forgot I'd lost. Just as lost as the cycles he'd left behind. How can Termina restart so meaninglessly? What am I fighting for now? He felt lost. This doomed land echoed his past at every turn, slowly taking with it all he had left. Link, are you okay? He looked at Tattle, blinking heavily in the sun. I'll be okay, Link said plainly. He turned to find the purple-haired kid in the fox mask. For the first time, Link noticed what the boy was doing, going to the South Clocktown postbox. He slipped a letter inside, checked to see if anyone had noticed, and found Link's eyes. The two stared at one another for a moment. The child was frozen, as if he'd been caught in some horrible act, and then he sprinted back up the laundry pool staircase. I'm kind of afraid to stand here too long, Tattle said, obviously not noticing the same thing Link had. The Skull Kid knows where we appear after we play the Song of Time. The sooner he doesn't know where we are, the better. Link eventually nodded. The kid with the fox face mask will have to wait, he thought. He and Tattle weren't sure how long they had before the imp returned. They'd devoted the rest of the last cycle's second day to resting, which had been entirely necessary. Link felt the bag at his side to make sure the rope and ice axes were there. He'd purchased them after thinking a little more about his journey north. To the mountains? Link asked, forcing out a smile despite the doom and gloom. He pushed the image of Zelda's body away. To the mountains, Tattle nodded, returning the smile. The two journeyed behind the clock tower, up the ramps, and through the doorway into the grassy landscape of North Clocktown. As they approached the gate, Link smiled again when he remembered his attempt to leave this place while a Deku scrub. The guard's eyes quickly found his sword and shield, and the man in shining armor nodded in approval as he passed. The mountains of Snowhead lie this way. Be careful. Termina's field's northern zone stretched before them. The white peaks of Snowhead towered far, far away on the horizon. The sky behind them was beautiful, its orange stretching outward and bleeding into the waning night's dark blue. The sun shone brightly off to the right, hidden behind Clocktown's walls. The grass ahead of him only went several hundred feet before it gave way to flat rock. After that, The land dropped off into a gorge that would be impossible to cross. On the other side, the land elevated into Snowhead's foothills. Link would have to descend the gorge and hope for a path upward. He inhaled the crisp mountain air that blew in his direction, closing his eyes. "Does anyone live in the mountains?" he asked.
"The Gorons," Tattle answered. "They should be a lot friendlier than the Deku scrubs. They keep to themselves for the most part. I prefer their beautiful green valleys over the swamp views any day."
Link walked across the remaining flatland. "Should we go to the Gorons first, then?" Link asked, remembering his multiple encounters with them in Hyrule.
"I'm not sure where else we would," the fairy replied. "I just hope the Skull Kid hasn't done anything like he did to the swamp. There isn't that much running water to poison, but I guess there is a lot of snow at the peaks."
However, some thought occurred to her, and then she sighed. "What?" Link asked.
"Just like the Deku Scrubs, the Gorons have also built a massive temple in worship of invisible deities,"
Tattle said dryly.
"I bet my left wing we're going to end up in there."
Link laughed and shook his head. "You really don't seem to think all that highly of gods. You don't think they appreciate us honoring them?"
"The way I see it," the fairy began, "they're not very good at their jobs. I mean, there's a giant moon in the sky, if you've forgotten. It's coming down to kill everyone in Termina in 3 days. Meanwhile, we have a murderous, superpowered lunatic chasing after us while we relive the same 3 days over and over again, all to try and stop this bad stuff from happening. Ourselves, I might add. A little divine intervention would be much appreciated."
"You don't think the goddess of time is helping us?" The fairy sighed again.
"I'm not sure," she said. "I guess I don't know if the forces around us come from gods and goddesses wanting to be worshipped. What I do know is that whatever is allowing us to go back in time, be it magic or something else we don't understand, it's struggling in this battle with Majora. And I'm not sure it's winning."
Link considered that. "I never thought about it that way, I guess. Do you think Fëanor, Din, and Nehru are real? The Triforce is. I had the Triforce of Courage, and the Shard of Power really did give Ganondorf unbelievable strength. It helped him rule over Hyrule for 7 years.
"The Triforce?"
Tattle asked. Link's eyes widened. "You've got to be kidding me. You've never heard of the Triforce?"
"No, I've heard of it," Tattle said. "But it's just an old myth around here. I mean, the only thing people here believe in are the 4 giants. They don't believe they created Termina, though. It's said they're its guardians, 1 in each land. But it's a myth, like the Triforce. No one alive has ever seen them, even if we celebrate them with the Carnival of Time. But most people don't think about the giants as real things. It's just a holiday now."
4 guardian giants, 1 in each land?" Link asked, one eyebrow raised.
"Yeah, that's what I said,"
she replied uncertainly. "You don't think that's what that thing in Odala's mask was, do you? The spirit? It was pretty big, and if there are 4 of them, 1 in each land..."
"Whoa!" Tattle stammered. I never thought about that. You might be right."
"So there might be some truth to these myths after all, huh?"
"But they're still failing at their jobs," Tattle grumbled. "The Skull Kid overpowered them all and sealed them into masks. If they're supposed to be our guardians, why is it that we're saving them?"
Link shrugged, realizing she had a point. "I had to save the guardian sages of Hyrule, too, now that I think about it. Navi once said we were just tools of the gods, that we were their way of saving the world. I had trouble accepting that at first, but it makes sense to me now. It doesn't matter if it's guardians, sages, or us, if it's always the gods behind it all."
"I'll just agree to disagree with you there," she said. "But pushing aside the mythology and the magic, my practical point still stands. What's the point of freeing the giants, the guardians, the deities, whatever you want to call them, if the Skull Kid has already proven he's stronger than them?"
"Maybe they were caught off guard," Link said. "Tails seemed to know what he was talking about, and the Skull Kid did get mad at him as soon as he mentioned them, so that makes me think it was important.
I guess it's the only lead we have,
Tattle shrugged.
and this is all just speculation anyways. I'm still ready to free the other 3 spirits. It's the only plan we have, and we can't stop Majora on our own.
No, we can't, he said in agreement, his mind returning to something that made him stop walking. Tattle, you still haven't told me what happened to Dark Link. The fairy stopped flying immediately, joining him just a few feet away from the gorge. Tattle didn't turn around to face him at first, but eventually she took a deep breath and did.
You haven't already figured it out?
Did he? Link's hand went to the mark on his chest.
You did exactly what you did in the forest fire,
Tattle said.
At first, you looked all nervous, like you were about to faint, and then suddenly your eyes turned purple and...
She stopped, turning away, as if the memory was troubling.
You didn't look like yourself. You looked so angry and evil. You were furious. All of a sudden, your appearance didn't change or anything except for your eyes. But you were so frightening. Even Darklink was scared. You weren't you. As soon as Darklink saw your eyes changed, he let go of your neck and backed away. But you were too fast. You stood up, grabbed his shoulder, and then you absorbed him. I'm not sure how else to describe it. Darklink just started screaming, and he didn't stop. He went inside of your scar. Then you collapsed back onto the wall and closed your eyes, and Darklink was gone.
Then, Link thought, looked away. He wasn't sure what to say or think.
At first, I was afraid that if I talked to you,
Tattle said,
your eyes would open, and they wouldn't be yours. Purple or worse, red now that Darklink was inside of you. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but I don't think it helped with your...
She trailed off. Curse? Link finished. Tattle didn't respond. I mean, so far it hasn't been a hindrance. No one died in the forest fire, and I've only ever harmed Dark Link and Skull Kid.
But there's no reasoning with you when you're in that state,
the fairy said.
I tried the first time, but you weren't there. I know you see from the Skull Kid's eyes every time, but your body's still there, moving without your control and with incredible power. What if it decided to do something worse than setting the entire forest on fire? What if you got mad at me one day and you changed and then you...
She stopped as if the thought was too horrifying. Don't say that, Link said. I already knew all of that, but I won't. I refuse to let it kill you. Tattle grimaced.
Link, let's stop talking about this. I know you wouldn't hurt me, and there's no point in worrying over something we can't control. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Link's face darkened, but he realized that she was right. He turned back to the gorge's edge. Right. I'll settle for crossing this first. The rocky landscape ended rather suddenly, dropping into an uneven, boulder-infested ravine. Across the gorge, the mountain's true foothills began. Rising land cut sharply upward from the bottom of the gorge. As Link eyed the small canyon, he decided the cliffside at his feet was sloped enough to make climbing down possible. However, he couldn't find a pathway out of it. The canyon's opposite wall was much steeper and smoother, and he didn't have good enough mountain gear to handle that. Link also spotted 2 creatures below. They were 10 times larger than him, green reptilian, and had spiked backs. Their large claws curled in relaxation as they slept beside each other, though Link knew exactly how deadly these monsters were.
Ha! Ever fought a Dodongo before?
Tattle asked, eyeing the beasts as well. Link couldn't help but smile. His Hylian expedition in Dodongo Cavern had been memorable. That was my first true adventure after leaving Kokiri Forest, he thought. He recalled Navi helping him use bomb flowers for the first time, and he also remembered the pure terror after a firekeese burnt his wooden shield. Yes, I fought plenty, but I'm hoping to sneak by them.
Finally, Tattle said. The noble hero chooses caution over glory.
Link scoffed and chose to ignore her comment. Is there a path out of the gorge, though? Or across it? He walked along the ravine's edge and scanned the other side. The rocky basin eventually curved around and out of sight, only completely leveling with Termina Field again in the west.
Yes, there is, Tattle said. Sorry, I don't usually worry about those. Because wings.
Yeah, he said. You'd still be stuck in that room under the clock tower if it wasn't for me.
And you'd have stumbled into that dark tunnel's big old ditch without me.
Look, Link said, smiling. We each have our uses. I do all the fighting, the ocarina playing, the smooth talking, and the door opening. And you light stuff up.
All right, fairy boy. I could still get to Goron Village and back before you even made it halfway up the mountain.
And then what would you do once you got to the temple? Link asked. Light up the dark hallways?
Yes, and then my superior wit and sarcasm would leave the monsters unconscious.
Link nodded. Touché. Tattle eventually helped him find a ramp at the gorge's opposite side, which ascended outside the ravine. Link noticed that it did look like a well-paved path. The intended route must have been climbing down this sloped wall, walking across the ravine's bottom, and then hiking up the other side's curvy pathway. That natural ramp climbed into the foothills, disappearing into an opening between two cliff sides. While the initial climb was already an obstacle, he saw two others. The Dodongos were sleeping right next to the ascending pathway, and then a large chunk of ice completely sealed the cliffside opening, blocking the way forward.
Huh, seriously?
Tattle said.
Right next to the monstrous lizards!
Like I said, we can sneak past them, Link said, as long as we don't make too much noise climbing down.
Oh, because we have such a strong history of avoiding the carnivorous wildlife of Termina.
Exactly, he said sarcastically, bending down and placing his foot over the edge. It met the slanted rock wall, but it was steeper than he realized. When he put his second foot over, he slid. Link's palms shot out to slow himself down, which worked, but he also immediately scraped his skin. Ah! Once he'd successfully stopped, Link turned his hands over to find blood shining on his palms. Tattle joined him and noted Link's soured expression. Gloves would have been a good idea, he said.
Ouch, she said. Actually, you should let me get those for you. You'll probably end up doing this more than once.
That'd be fantastic, Link said, reaching into his bag to grab rupees.
See, one more thing I'm useful for, she said as she took them. Making up for your forgetfulness. Just, stay here, or keep climbing, I guess. I'll be right back.
Thanks, Tattle. The little white ball disappeared over the rising land to return to Clocktown. He stood there for a moment, eventually deciding to turn around on his small ledge. He managed without falling, leaning back against the rock wall and seeing how far was left to climb. The Dodongos were still fast asleep, and the morning had hardly broken. The mountains loomed ominously behind and above everything. Eventually, he heard a familiar twinkling noise. Tattle's back. That was really fast. However, he looked up to find a purple ball of light instead. The fairy flew right over the ledge and didn't notice him at first, beaming straight for the mountains. It took Link only a moment to realize his mistake. Tail! He exclaimed. The purple fairy stopped at the sound of his name. He turned to see the green-clad, blonde youth standing far below him. Their eyes met from across the gorge. Though Link could do nothing but stand there, Tail said nothing and eventually turned around, flying away as if Link had never spoken. Link balked, clinging to the rock wall for support as he leaned out a bit. Hey, Tail! Wait! The fairy never stopped. The mountains soon engulfed Tail, leaving Link alone. He shook his head in confusion, though the Dodongos quickly caught his attention. Oh, Din. In growing terror, he realized that his exclamations had woken the beasts. They now stirred from their sleep, and Link realized just how vulnerable he was. He knew well enough that those creatures could scale any wall. Their long, powerful legs made climbing easy. The two animals quickly noticed the boy trapped on the wall. The one who saw him first hissed, slowly walking over to the bottom of his slope. Its powerful feet thudded loudly on the rocky ravine. The second Dodongo remained in place, stretching and yawning as it woke. Clearly, they didn't think two were needed to take down this prey. I can't wait on Tattle anymore, he thought. He turned to try climbing back up, but the short slide had left him trapped. There were no grips to help him get back up. I'd only scrape my hands again and end up becoming a snack faster. He decided to look for a better area to fight from, sliding to the right in search of sturdier ground. The approaching Dodongo was already climbing the sloped wall. Its nails penetrated the rocky terrain easily, making the ascent a swift breeze. Link quickened his pace, slipping only once before he spotted a larger ledge. It was, however, out of reach from his tiny ledge, though still higher than the lizard. Can I jump from here? He wondered. Link inched himself closer to the edge while the Dodongo stopped its climb and craned its head backward. Link knew what came next as the beast inhaled a deep, deep breath. He steadied himself on the narrow crevice, summoning all the confidence he could. When the Dodongo exhaled, fire bellowed upward in a wide, powerful blast toward its target. Link let go of the wall, ran a couple of steps along the crevice, and then leapt. The fire crashed into the rock behind him as his plummet began. Link successfully crashed onto the larger ledge and rolled to absorb the fall. The stone was jagged, ripping into his skin as he tumbled and stopped right at the edge. The Dodongo was still several feet below him, but now much further to the right. It hissed in defeat as its steam of fire ended. Don't stop now, he told himself. The battle had just begun. Link scrambled to his feet, opened his bag, pulled out the rope, and bent to wrap it around his ledge's sharp, jutting edge. The fire-breathing, two-legged giant lizard climbed horizontally to be in shooting range again. Link was confident in the newly formed knot, pulling it taut and bringing the rope slack into his hands. The Dodongo stopped to breathe fire again, just as Link ran forward and leapt, keeping the rope close. The lizard stopped when it saw its prey now, hurtling toward it from above. When Link's rope eventually ran out, it tightened, and then he was swinging right for the Dodongo's face. Link let go and reached for his sword. The beast could not crane its neck back to follow him as the hero flew overhead. Link came down to fall alongside the creature's back, plunging his sword into its spiky tail. The Dodongo yelped shrilly, and the sword remained jammed in place. Link held onto his hilt for dear life, now dangling above the gorge as blood shot out from beneath the scaly skin. The giant lizard attempted to remove its paw from the rock, but its legs quickly grew weak. As the Dodongo started to wobble, Link pulled himself back toward the rock wall. His boots found another crevice, and he planted them firmly there. He yanked his sword free and hugged the wall closely, just as the lizard fell. The Dodongo fell past its prey, barely failing to bring the hero down with itself. Link heard it crash into the basin and release one final yelp. He turned to his sword covered in blood, though everything else on his person was still clean. He knew that damage to the Dodongo's tail was always lethal in Hyrule, and it appeared the same thing was true for Termina. He saw that his rope now dangled by itself, several feet up and away from him. The other lizard turned from its half-sleep to see its fallen comrade. Link heard the hiss, and he knew his freedom was short-lived. Now that he descended more of the wall, though, he noticed that it had begun to even out. He climbed down much faster now, deciding to grab the rope later. He ignored his throbbing palms, which burned even more after the rope had dug into his scrapes. And it's probably mixing with Dodongo blood, too. A problem for later. Just before making it to the bottom, he heard another great inhale. Link immediately jumped off the remaining slope. His boots landed in the gorge's bottom, only sending a minor shockwave of pain into his knees. He watched the fire miss, barreling overhead into the rock wall he'd been clinging to. The hero spun around to see the second lizard already preparing another fiery surprise. Link drew his shield as the attack left its gaping jaws. The flames rippled off its metal surface. Link's feet slid backward against the stone ground, unable to withstand the pressure. Get to its tail, Link told himself, though he wasn't sure how that'd be possible. The Dodongos were very much aware of their natural weakness and could spin around almost instantly. This giant lizard was currently enraged and unable to be taken by surprise. The Dodongo stepped closer to Link as the fire continued, which sent Link sliding further back. The heat was intense, though he kept his sweaty arm that bore the shield steady. His face was contorted in concentration as he waited for the lizard's breath to run out. Eventually, it did. Link brought down his shield and wasted no time. He ran to circle the beast, leaping away from the next fire blast, stowing his sword and drawing his bow. As the beast inhaled, Link's arrow traveled directly into its open throat. The lizard made an odd choking sound and was stunned into silence. The Dodongo shook its head, clearly in immense pain as it stumbled away. When the lizard looked up next, its prey was now gone. Link had ran behind the Dodongo, and his sword traveled straight through its tail. The lizard stomped around in agony, screaming and eventually collapsing feet away from its brethren. Link panted, stepping back from the dead Dodongos as his blue eyes took in the battle scene. He was still exhausted when a white ball light appeared over the rocky wall. Tattle stared dumbfounded at the carnage as she flew to rejoin him. "You're late," Link said, smiling at the fairy's shock.
I brought your gloves?"
she said. The thick leather, dark brown hand garments looked quite large in her small hands.
"Which I guess weren't needed?"
"No, they'll still help," Link said. He stowed his weapons and brought up his palms to show the raw, bleeding skin.
"Link!" she exclaimed. "Why didn't you wait for me? Wasn't our plan to sneak past them?"
Yeah, it was," he said, wiping his hands off before he slid the brown gloves on. He flexed his fingers and fastened the straps. "But your brother ruined that for me."
"My brother?"
Tattle said.
"What are you talking about?"
"He flew by right after you left," Link said, pointing over toward the break in the mountains. "I tried to call his name and stop him, but that woke them up."
"Tail flew by?" the fairy said, sounding surprised. "He just flew over the gorge by himself? Was he coming from Clocktown?"
"I don't know. You didn't bump into each other at all?"
"No, we didn't. Did he see you? What happened? Did he just not hear you?"
"No, he heard," Link said. "He just chose to turn around and ignore me, leaving me to the Dodongos."
"Ouch,"
Tattle said, looking off while deep in thought.
"He was probably looking for the Skull Kid. I guess he's the only one out of the time loops now. Now that the imp's not where he's supposed to be, he's probably just looking for him. And we both knew to come to the mountains if we couldn't find him."
"Do you think that's where he is, then? The Skull Kid?"
"Yes,"
the fairy said gravely.
"Like I said, he comes here whenever he needs to recover, which never happened very often. But whenever he's tired or needs to rest, there's a cave right at the edge of Snowhead."
"Does it lead outside of Termina?" Link asked. "Have you seen the border?"
"No,"
she said uncertainly. The fairy paused, taking a moment to add more. "What is she not telling me?" Link thought. He remembered all the awkwardness in Woodfall when Beyond Termina had been broached.
"He won't let us go all the way through the cave, and I don't want to anyways. It's like Koma said, weird stuff happens near the borders of Termina, and not the good kind of weird."
"I know," Link said. "That's where I saw Zelda and had my first—" He trailed off as those dark purple eyes surfaced in his memory. "I guess the edge of Termina isn't the only thing we're free to talk about."
"Tail was okay though, right?"
Tattle asked.
"He wasn't hurt?"
"He was fine," Link said, walking back toward the sloped wall. "Aside from his jerk self leaving me to die." He climbed up just far enough to retrieve the rope. In a few short minutes, it had been untethered and returned to his bag.
"Yeah, my brother's definitely not one to be a hero," Tattle said, "or do anything for anyone else. Ever. He probably expected to see me with you, and when he didn't, well, From his perspective, us ditching you is still fresh on his mind, and I bet he doesn't know the horrific things the Skull Kid is capable of yet.
Link nodded as they walked around the Dodongo corpses toward the rocky slope leading onward. They followed it as it curved around to head straight into the mountains.
Maybe we'll run into him, Tattle said. Then I can make sure he knows what a jerk he is. I bet he's forgotten since I'm not there to remind him every day.
She smiled, and Link wondered how hard missing her brother had been. She rarely brought him up, which likely was part of how she coped.
But I still don't want to find him, she added. I want to leave him out of this if we can. I wouldn't forgive myself if he died. Even if he came back at the start of the next loop, it's just...
I know, Link said. He didn't want to talk about that anymore, and the fairy quickly realized her mistake. He'd already lost another version of Tattle, and now most recently, Anju. Best not to ever let Tattle know that the Skull Kid killed Tail in that first loop too, Link thought.
But,
Tattle said, turning back to look at the Dodongo bodies now far below and behind them.
You really did do a good job here. Monster slaying seems to be a passion of yours.
It definitely is, Link said, glad for the topic change. Wolfos, keys, dragons, odd little tornadoes of water with eyeballs in the center, floating hands. I've seen my fair share. I miss fighting with the Master Sword, though. The Kokiri blade on my back isn't quite the same.
Tattle said. Maybe we can find a sword more master-like for you before our adventure is over.
They stopped when they reached the massive chunk of ice filling the mountain passageway. It went from wall to wall and was much too tall and slick for climbing. Far above the roadblock, thick stalactites of ice dangled over the impasse, their sharp points glistening.
Could the Master Sword shatter something like this?
Tattle asked. Probably not, Link said.
Yeah, you'd probably need a really big hammer to smash this thing up, and I don't think you'd be able to fit that on your back.
Link smiled. Actually, I totally could fit a hammer on my back. Used to have a really big one called a Megaton hammer. Tattle scoffed.
The Megaton hammer? The Master Sword? You Hylians really have something to prove, don't you?
Link raised an eyebrow. Won't need any hammers or swords to get past this one, though. He took a step backward and retrieved his bow. He notched an arrow and aimed it at the stalactites. Tattle made sure she was a safe distance away as his projectile soared through the air. It struck a pointed ice spike near its base. Link brought down his arms and waited as the deeply lodged arrow went to work. Cracks quickly spread through the ice as chunks popped and crackled out. It didn't take long before the fissure grew, and then the stalactite fell, slamming into the ice, blocking the pathway. The roadblock exploded into hundreds of glistening shards. Link brought his shield to deflect the ice, only lowering it once the sounds of shattering had settled. He smiled at the now open pathway. It curved up into the heart of the mountains, and he shivered when a cold, chilled wind blew over him, as if it had been bottled up behind the icy block. The boy and his fairy continued into Snowhead.